Welcome to Stepping Stones L&D Career Journeys Explained. This is the podcast that shares the how to my fellow L&Ders about your fellow L&Ders. How did they come across their roles and positions and their success? So I'm your host, Christina Rogers, and today I have Jared Speight as my guest. So Jared is a former teacher of secondary and post-secondary education. He has 14 years of experience of consistent success under his belt in helping students meet and exceed his projected growth measures. He is a full-time instructional designer now, using ADDIE model, authoring tools such as Articulate Storyline and Rise, and creation tools like Camtasia and beyond. So in addition to this strong career he has diligently created for himself, Jared, despite working from home, has his hands even that much more incredibly full, as he is the dad of two amazing little humans. And side note, he's only able to boast about being second best in his Minecraft playing in that household. But no matter the juggling of everything, this man is always striving to learn and grow as an instructional designer in this career. And he has a tremendous heart for all teachers who genuinely desire to take on the path as he did in transitioning from teaching to L&D. In fact, and we'll share this again a little bit later, but he has partnered with the Global Learning and Development Community, your GLDC, to lead a weekly meetup over the summer, which is called the Summer Break Room. And he offers teachers transitioning into L&D to connect and learn together. So if this piques your interest, we'll mention again a little bit later, but as of right now, he's meeting on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Central. I will let you guys figure out your own time zones because I already messed it up with Jared this morning. So that's what it's going to be, Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Central for the remainder of the summer. Those of you that are transitioning like Jared has, this is your place to go check things out. So welcome, Jared. It is so good to have you. I'm really excited to see what you have in store for those listening in and watching in, because I know it's not an always easy feat to make any kind of change in your life. So I really appreciate your time and coming in and joining.
Thanks for having me.
So we'll dive in. I make fun of this as the story time, right? So how did you get into L&D and or realize that L&D is where you wanted to pivot, a new career to carve out?
Gotcha. As far as L&D goes, I guess that kind of depends on whether or not you count classroom teaching as learning and development. I know some people go back and forth in that. I knew I wanted to be a teacher when I was 9, and I never wavered on that, except for when Jurassic Park came out and I thought paleontology was really cool. But other than that, I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. I love working alongside kids, helping them out, moving them along their pathway. But ultimately, especially, early in the pandemic, that was taking a toll on my mental and physical health. And I decided that it just wasn't worth it anymore. So I had to get out, right?
Yeah.
And at that point, I had never heard of instructional design. I knew of learning and development vaguely, but I was looking for anything when I first decided to transition out. And it wasn't too long before I realized that I didn't just need to be running away from something, but I needed to run towards something that I liked.
I like that.
And that was when I stumbled into instructional design.
That's pretty cool. So was there anything in particular that led you on this pathway, as you, I guess, how did you filter, I guess would be my first question. And then once you kind of filtered through and realize this is what I want to run toward, how did you come to that conclusion that was like, this is the way to go?
Some of it was process of elimination.
Okay.
I knew that I wanted to go toward L&D. And there's a ton of fields in that. You've got your LMS administrators, your voiceover artist. I ruled out voiceover artist right away. I hate listening to recordings of myself talk. Videos are even worse. So I just crossed that from the get-go. I'll leave that to Sion and David Gilbert and those people. I want nothing to do with that. I did consider training facilitator. I had been leading professional development workshops for other teachers, even back to my first year in the classroom.
Nice.
at the school district and state level. So that
Okay.
was a consideration. But ultimately, I decided on instructional design because I started thinking about what I loved about teaching and just life in general.
Yeah.
And that's building things, puzzles, supporting people in reaching their goals. I love toying around with new technology, tools, hardware, and all those things kind of brought me to e-learning development and instructional design.
That's fantastic. Yeah, the reason I was curious to know a little bit more was just because you had that facilitator piece, right? As a teacher standing up before students. And so that was interesting that I think a lot of people tend to go down that two directional divide, if you will. So do I go from teacher to facilitator or teacher to instructional designer? And it's interesting to find out what really kind of navigated you more one way versus the other. Not saying that there's not rules that you have to wear those multiple hats, but now that as you've kind of seen, the industry is finally kind of understanding these roles need to be separated out, that it's interesting to hear why you would choose one over the other. And I think that was very smart that you were able to reflect on it in that capacity to go, what is it that I love even more within what I do?
Mhm.
I mean, that's not always easy, and not everybody has that understanding or awareness to question it to that
Yeah,
degree.
absolutely. There's a lot of things about teaching that are a lot of fun, and narrowing that list down to which you like more is a difficult process. Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine it was, but courageous of you to push for it. I mean, I know that circumstances kind of put you in a bind, to put you in a corner to kind of force that hand, but regardless, the fact that you made that effort to do so, I mean, that's not easy. And then here you are helping others be able to kind of achieve that along the same pathway. So I like that. It's really neat, Jared. Um, so once you decided this is the avenue you're going to take and you're going to head this way, what were your, not to make fun of my podcast title, but your stepping stones? Like, what specifically did you start to incorporate? Did you start looking at books, looking online? And then what helped you, start creating that directional, not even pathway, but um, skill set? What did you find that you needed to make sure you had under your belt before, sadly, I hate to say it, but somebody out there in the world would start taking things seriously,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. There were a lot. Um, a career change, I mean, it's a lot of work.
Oh, yes.
Um, and even something that seems similar, like teaching to instructional design, there's a lot of stuff that transfers over, but like you said, you got to stand out and show that those skills aren't just transferable skills, that you actually have them in the industry and the context
Yeah.
the employers want. So there were a lot. I started by looking at the job descriptions of
Hmm.
companies and positions that I would be applying for in the future and looking at what they required. And I noticed that a lot of them were saying either graduate school or a boot camp. So I started researching what are my options there.
Right.
Um, I ended up deciding on grad school because I wanted to leave the door open for higher education later,
Nice.
just in case. Like,
Yeah.
I don't work in higher education right now, but maybe 20, 30 years down the road, I'll decide to get back into it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the graduate degree kind of opens up doors there and with potential government jobs.
Yeah.
So I started there and I found the American College of Education, and it kind of checked all the boxes. It was cheap, it was flexible, it was accredited, and at the time they even offered articulate subscription with it.
Oh,
So
wow.
I was
That's
like, I
cool.
killed two birds with one stone there.
Yeah.
And I had some incredible professors there. Dr. Fesich and Dr. Yaloff were great, and I had the pleasure of having both of them multiple times.
Wow.
And they really helped me develop my practice and gave specific feedback on course assignments and things like that to help me improve.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so that was a big one.
Hmm.
And I just finished that program back in May.
Well
So
done.
yeah, I officially graduate the end of July, but the coursework's been done for a bit.
Oh, that's
Um,
a great way to finish it off.
it is, yeah. And while I was doing that, a guy named Russell Sweep, he actually lives in the same city I do.
I know. I
Uh,
discovered that. How
yeah,
dare you two?
Yeah, it's a great city. But he found me on LinkedIn. I guess he was searching for instructional designers in Asheville, and he invited me to the GLDC and his Storyline Project Club,
Yes.
and that was kind of my gateway into that community. So I attended
How
his Storyline
funny.
Project Club, kind of shared my projects, and then learned from the ones that he was sharing and showing off from other people.
Yeah.
Um, and fell into the networking meetups, which used to be on the Fridays. So
Yes.
that was
Now Wednesday.
yeah, that was a great opportunity to meet other people in a variety of fields and kind of learn what their experience was, and also confirm that instructional design was the right choice.
Nice.
Like you can look at it on paper and think I'm interested in that, but it's different when you actually talk to somebody in the field and kind of confirm it.
I agree.
So GLDC was monumental for my transition. I can't express how great they were. They had the free mentoring program. Matt Sestati, or I'm probably pronouncing his last name wrong, but when I was starting my job search, he helped me with my resume, my portfolio, and really getting started. Like it was huge.
That's
I can't express how
fantastic.
helpful that was. So you got
Wow.
GLDC, grad school, and there's a lot of independent stuff out there too,
Yeah.
like the e-learning hero challenges every week. You mentioned LinkedIn Learning on the first episode of your podcast.
Yeah.
And I love that. And you can get it free through your library in some places.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm cheap, so that's always nice.
Oh, resources like that are just, yeah, unbelievable and so worth making that little effort just to sign in and check it out.
Absolutely. And then, YouTube channels, Ashley Chiason, Devlin Peck, Luke Hobson, and Tim Slate's book on e-learning development. Like all those were things that you could just pick up whenever you wanted to,
Yeah,
and get a great deal of wisdom from.
that's fantastic. Yeah, so many resources that are out there, but it's so fantastic to hear it from you, Jared, like what really like hit for you and putting it all together. Um, I love the fact how much I didn't realize how much the GLDC had made such an impact with you. And it was funny when you started speaking because I knew that you and Russell lived in the same area. Shout out to the Biltmore. But I didn't realize that it went that direction. I almost was wondering if he had reached out to you to, start kind of building up his career. But I think it's really funny to hear it the other way around.
Yeah, it was
That's
the opposite.
hilarious.
Yeah, he helped me quite a
That's
bit.
really funny. I didn't know that. Shout out to Russell. I'll bug you later.
Absolutely.
Um, that's incredible. I know I've had well, I can't say that much of a similar because I've never been teacher K through 12. It's always been adjunct for college. But my thing that took my attention here was the fact that um, with what you did, you had to kind of figure out, do I go to grad school? Do I do the boot camp? And I mean, there's always those options out there. And I love the brilliancy that you also had the awareness and understanding of why limit myself and what can I do to expand my options should I decide to return at a later time to academia. I think that's great. I've always had that kind of feeling myself. Again, I'm not a K through 12 former teacher, but I've always had that little foot in academia and not wanting to force where I only have to do one thing or the other. I have never been a fan of that. I think personally they influence each other. And I think you can speak to this more than me, which is a lot of things that you have seen in academia can transition, but vice versa. And you learn from those two worlds. And I think it really makes you a stronger person within L&D, regardless if you're an instructional designer or facilitator or LMS admin. I mean, just whatever you do, because you have a greater understanding of the way that people learn and what works for them, regardless of age. Um, and I think that's quite powerful. I think that was very brilliant of you to come to those terms. And it's not easy. And I've seen it where, like you said, how much it costs for grad school in this versus doing a boot camp. Everybody is a little different. But I think that was tremendous That's not an easy thing to look at and make that decision. I had a situation where I started getting in a different version of Catch 22 in the corporate world. The first version, by the way, to me is, oh, you don't have enough experience, but then you have to get hired to get experience and you get stuck in that loop. That's one version. But the one I eventually came into was, okay, you have the education, you have experience, but even though the experience is on point, as instructional design work, the education, my education was English major, that's my undergrad, and then communications management. And I had a tech writing certification. So none of it said instructional design whatsoever. And that forced my hand to kind of look at programs as well. So for those listening and watching in on this, just be aware that these things exist and be very mindful about how you navigate. And I give so much credit to Jared on this one because it's not easy to sit down and try to figure out. I mean, everyone's a little bit different, and time and budget is definitely major factors, but consider the fact that he left some doors open for himself for any possible future endeavors should he decide to change things up. So very cool. I really like that.
Part of it might have been brilliant. Part of it was also naive. Like I thought at the time when I started, I would be able to double up on the courses and be done in like 8 months. And that was just foolishness. I did that one term and never again will I take 2 grad school classes at a time.
Oh boy.
But it ended up working out.
That's a lot when you have the family
Yeah.
and working and all. I have my own personal version of that. So yes, never again, Jared. Okay.
Never
We
again.
learned from that.
That's right. Don't make the same mistakes twice.
If anything, please learn a couple of those things from our show today.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: with the whole transition, the steps, and everything that you did, what gave you the confidence to make this ultimate transition at the end of everything? I mean, I know that you were kind of forced into it. I know that you figured out, okay, I need to be running towards something, right? I have to make something out of this. But aside from the circumstances, as you gained your skill and you gained your knowledge, what gave you the confidence to go, all right, let's just do this. Let me just apply. Let me jump in. Or as I saw, you do freelance work, let me just go ahead and put a bid for this job and see what I can do.
Well, like we've mentioned before, a career change is a monumental task. It's huge and it's really too big to take on all at once or even to look at the whole picture. So what helped me out in getting the confidence and actually carrying out the plan was being very methodical. And using backwards design, right, to use a instructional design or teaching term. I knew where I wanted to go.
That.
And I had several smaller goals to get there.
Yeah.
Things like vaguely growing your network or learning 3 software programs, building a portfolio, that's too much. But if you were to set aside 30 minutes a day for LinkedIn and growing your network or engaging with content, and then for a weekly goal, learn the next 3 modules of Camtasia's Voyager certification, like those are doable.
Yeah.
So it's really just breaking down, looking at where you want to go, breaking that big task down into smaller ones and checking them off one by one. And then it doesn't require confidence. It's just dedication and sticking with it.
And I think that is what gives you that boost, if you will. I think like you had joined with the GLDC and of course with Russell's group and everything. I think, as you said, it's that combination. So if you're doing a little bit every day, but you're meeting with these folks on a consistent basis weekly, and you find yourself able to be a part of the conversation. So you transition from just listening in to now, I started playing with some tools or I started reading, whether it's the ADDIE model or I still need to finish map it. Um, you know, things of that nature, and putting it together to where you can actually start conversing with other folks in the industry and have, not to sound mean, but intelligible conversations. And you realize, oh, I actually know what they're talking about, and I know what I'm talking about. It's no longer, it transitions over time in doing this, from the hesitation to I actually know, what they're saying about particular storyline, for instance, and here's my input. And this is what I played with this week. And um, I think that combination, like you said, and I love the fact that you said being methodical about it, and putting that time just a little bit every day, because it is overwhelming. That's incredibly overwhelming feat to transition, first of all. But then you make an excellent point. Portfolio. That's like a mountain, What are you talking about? I have to put what together? How do I do that? Why would I have to do that? And the scary thing, I think, also with trying to make it happen when you really don't have that, right? You don't have the experience to go, oh, I can point to a project I used to do. You don't have that available to you. So if anything, my gosh, I'm going to do the whole advocacy thing here. For those listening and watching anything, oh my gosh, that was such brilliance. And I know, Jared, you're like, that's not brilliant. That's just, I get it. I get it. It's totally life. But I think many times we get so overwhelmed and there's just too much going on. And even though we know logically that's the way to better handle things, it is so nice to have somebody from the outside reaffirming what we already know and kind of help us get a jump start to go, Jared understood this. He got it. I was on the right path. I should do it methodically. I should do just 15 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day. I'm going to go do that now. I mean, that really makes such a big difference. It's that I keep thinking about the saying, the moment you said it was just, how do you eat an elephant? Well, it's one bite at a time, right? You're not just going to go engulf the thing. Heaven
And
forbid.
and I
Yeah.
think it actually saves time in the long run. I know it's counterintuitive, but
Yeah.
when I was in that desperate stage and I just need out, like I applied to 100 jobs between Thanksgiving, November 21, and the end of January that
Yeah.
following year. And it was all a waste. Like all that time applying for jobs, making resumes, writing cover letters, because I wasn't methodical, it was all
Yeah.
wasted.
Mm,
And then taking the pause and slowing down. Like I
yeah.
applied to 40 jobs after that little break, and I
Yeah.
got 3 offers, and there would have been a fourth if they didn't change from remote to hybrid. Like
Yeah.
it would have saved me so much time if I would have been methodical at the
Right.
beginning of that journey.
That's That'll do it. That'll make a
Yeah.
huge difference. So that's absolutely fantastic. Well done. So in the social media world, Jared, where can people find you?
Mostly on LinkedIn. I'm not really on too many places. So LinkedIn is the main one. I have a blog on my website that I should probably update more. But I don't have a Facebook, and I haven't been using Twitter as much since the management change. So LinkedIn, my website, and GLDC are probably the best places to find me.
Awesome. Yep. And then this is where my plug goes in. And Tuesdays with the GLDC at 8 p.m. Central for the rest of the summer. So check out that summer break room if you really want to get in on this transition, should you be in that similar fate of Jared. Okay. So we have where we can find you. I appreciate you so much for all of your worldly L&D version, I guess, travels here. Is there anything else that you would give advice to? Anything that
Um,
we missed for someone that, or if you look back on yourself back at that time?
Gotcha. I guess I can't understate how important LinkedIn is if you're trying to transition careers, in your portfolio. Like if you're really interested in moving from the classroom to instructional design, don't bother applying until you have a portfolio. especially in this job market, you're not just competing against John Doe transitioning teacher like you're up against his sister Jane, who's been in the industry for 15 years and got laid off last month. So make sure that you are a solid candidate that doesn't have to rely on transferable skills.
That's fantastic. I love that analogy. That was great. Feeling you've used this before, Jared.
I've got a few
great.
lines that go back. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, I thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate everything that you had to share with our audience. I seriously can't thank you enough. I mean, just the wisdom within everything that you shared. And so for my listeners and viewers, we want to give a big thank you to Jared. And if this is the pathway you wish to choose, you know where to find him. I would say put this on repeat, go back and listen to his steps again. And until next time, please continue stepping forward. Thank you all so much. Thanks, Jared.
Thank you.